everyone, and welcome back to Maple Leaf Reviews. I'm your host, Jeffrey.
And I am Jacob.
And today we're going to be doing a re-review of Ninja All-Stars.
Yeah.
So we did a before and after, where we looked at it before and after our very first play. We ended up playing a few rules wrong, which was the main portion of my criticism of the game.
Yeah.
So I felt it only fair that I go back, try the game again, playing with the correct rules, and then come back and see what I think of the game after that.
Sure.
So we're just going to jump into what do we think of the art and components of the game.
Yeah, art and components, I love it. If you like the kind of chibi anime style, similar to Super Dungeon, Arcadia Quest, that kind of thing, you'll love this. It looks great. The components themselves, the models, high detail, very well done. The board has a nice kind of glossy finish, very pretty, bright and colorful. And I think the cards are the only thing that I would have a little bit of a problem with. They're a little flimsy. They came warped for me, so all the cards are slightly warped. And the little chits. The chits would be the only other problem I have with the components, in that they can clutter up the board a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're all very similar looking. They're just like faces of a ninja, an anime face, and they just have different kind of expressions.
Yeah.
So what do those all mean? And that basically covers all the components for me.
Yeah, I think basically the same thing. I think it looks nice. It has a nice board presence, and that gloss finish on the main board makes it look really nice.
Yeah.
For the rules and the teaching, like having read through the rulebook now several times.
Several times.
Just to make sure that we got everything right. I did find that the layout of the rulebook was a bit hard to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Some things for combat were mentioned later in the rulebook, but then there were some key points, especially like range combat was in another section. The thing about not being able to re-roll dice that you already re-rolled was like at the very beginning of the rulebook. So I just felt that the layout of the rules was a little off and not really easy to look up things while playing.
Yeah, I found it kind of clunky layout. As you mentioned, some of the things are just in different locations. So it will talk about range combat. It will give you some exceptions that why range combat is different from normal combat. But then it gives you more exceptions to ranged combat in other categories, other paragraphs in later pages. So if you were, doing a ranged combat test and you were like, oh, how does that work exactly again? You wouldn't be able to just dart to the ranged combat section and look, because some of that information is missing. Some of it's over here and over there.
Yeah.
So a little bit fiddly with the layout.
Yeah, and for teaching, I found once I knew the rules, the game moved along pretty quickly. I didn't have to go back a whole lot. So once you know it, it's pretty good to play.
Yeah, it's pretty overall simplistic, just little fiddly things, lots of exceptions. Once you get those cleared up, it's not too bad.
Theme and immersion, what did you think about that?
Probably my favorite thing of the game. I love the ninja theme. It's just a kind of brawl skirmish game with these ninjas all battling. I like that the combat system seems very thematic. You're rolling all these elemental dice, doing these different elemental attacks. They cancel each other out. I'm shooting a fireball at you. You're doing this water wave attack, which those two dice cancel out. Yeah. Makes sense. And there's the option for moving in combat as well. If you choose the result of wind, you can blow an enemy away, or water, you kind of flow the combat over to another zone. So it feels very ninja-y, jumping off rooftops, through the trees, and kind of going all over the place.
Yeah, it's not very like classic ninja where it's based in reality. It's more fantasy ninja.
For sure.
And on to, I think the main part for me is gameplay and mechanics.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was range combat.
Okay.
The group that I was playing last time, they had some pretty cool sniper guys that rolled lots of dice. But even still, I found that the range combat was just lackluster. Most of the time, I rolled the dice and then just nothing happened, because only 2 of the symbols actually do anything in range combat.
Correct, yeah.
So a whole lot of the time, I was just rolling a whole bunch of dice, and then I was just like, oh, nothing happened. And then we just moved on to the next model. So it felt very lackluster for range combat.
Yeah, I feel the same way about ranged combat. You feel like you're going to be doing something and you end up rolling the dice and you can't choose any of the options that were actually rolled, which just means nothing happens.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into just dice rolls altogether, where the majority, I think, for combat, killing an enemy or having anything significant happen in combat or any other test for that matter seems to be that the percentage of success is really low.
Right.
So you're rolling 3 dice for this test, and the percentage is, a 45% chance that you're going to succeed at that test, and you only have 1 action per model. So why would I make an action that has a 45% chance of success?
Yeah, I feel like when you're attacking, the odds of actually anything significant happening are pretty low. So it just feels as the game goes by that you're not doing a whole lot. Especially if the dice rolls don't go in your favor. You're just like, okay, I activated 4 of my models this turn, and I've done nothing to affect the state on the board. So it just feels like you spend a lot of time doing nothing.
Yeah, at best, you're giving like 1 stun token to a model, and then as soon as that model activates, all the stun tokens are removed. So you're kind of limiting the model, because what stun does is it gives you only one of your 2 options. You can either attack or move instead of do both.
Right.
So really, all you're doing by giving them a stun is just slightly slowing them down.
Right.
And it feels like you're not getting anywhere a lot of the time. You're not achieving any goals. So your dice rolls you're rolling to make sure nothing happens in the game. Yeah. Is what it feels like to me.
Yeah. The next thing is another thing that you use the dice for is the affinity tests.
Yeah.
So if you're searching for stealth models, and this is one of the rules that we got wrong, was you roll 3 dice and you just need to get the symbol of your faction.
Yeah.
In order to succeed. So you search for them to bring them out of stealth. Or if you're moving away or around a model, you need to do an affinity test. And if you fail that, then your turn immediately ends.
Yeah. And your character is stunned.
Yeah. So I'm not a huge fan of the affinity test. There's more likely that you're going to fail. So why would you even move if you're standing next to someone? It's better to just straight up attack them. And I find that promotes just standstill combat, which I felt didn't feel very ninja-y, if that's even a word.
Sure, it is now.
And yeah, it just kind of made things clunky, and things just clunked up in the middle, and everyone didn't want to move.
Yeah. I felt the exact same way. Anytime you get close to a unit, you generally don't want to move at all. You just want to duel it out. And I think what they tried to do was 2 of the elements, wind and water, promote moving the combat to a different location so it could be more advantageous for you. But I find generally it wasn't something you wanted to do.
Right.
You felt like it was more beneficial to kill the enemy unit or stun them so that they couldn't move or couldn't activate. But again, that leads to nothing happening. Yeah. And the moving of combat leads to just giving you a better chance at the next combat resolution. But the combat is just roll a whole bunch of dice and hope you get lucky, because it's really hard to kill anything.
Yeah, it is. And you can use some of the moon cards. Yeah. Some of them are really good. Like they give you like an extra 3 dice.
Or immortality.
Yeah, basically. And then some are just like, oh, you can re-roll this one die.
1 die.
So there's a bit of a power swing with those. And even if you get the powerful ones that give you lots of dice to roll, I mean, there were times I rolled like 9 dice and nothing happened.
Yep.
Just because the symbols that could kill you didn't come up. And then you had the same thing happen. You rolled a whole boatload of dice, re-rolled them, and still nothing happened.
Yeah, I rolled 13 dice total with all my re-rolls, and there was no effect for that combat. Yeah. Just because it was ranged combat, or actually, no, that one wasn't ranged combat, sorry. But, there was just no effective result. It was just 1 stun token was all that happened, which you just took off the very next turn with your next action.
Yeah. And then, so the mode that we were playing, First we played the Brawl for before and after. Then we played King of the Hill.
Yeah.
And I found it was kind of the same. You're trying to all be in the same area attacking. And again, that's still promoted just stand still combat. I stand next to you. I try to hit you. Oh, I didn't hit you. Oh, you try and hit me. Oh, you didn't hit me.
Yeah.
And then it's just you're just in the middle trying to trade blows.
Yeah, and nothing really happens. I felt that there was a little more tactics with the King of the Hill in that you could position your model so that the enemy had to move through your influence zone to get to the central area.
Yeah.
So I did my best to kind of block you, force you to actually stop and attack those guys or try to run through, which you never want to do.
Right.
So there was a little bit of tactics, but yeah, I don't know. The different modes seem very similar so far. The only one that was kind of different was Capture the Flag, which I played. But again, it's, just trying to get a wide spread of influence, so people have to try and run through your influence zone and force standstill combat.
Right. And then the last thing here is game length.
Yeah.
We ended the game early because you were just destroying me,
and you had no chance of winning due to the scoring system of this last game.
Yeah, so we cut it off. It was still an hour and 20 minutes long, and for a game that's an hour and a half ish, and you kind of just feel like you're rolling a whole bunch of dice, but then nothing really happens.
Yeah,
it's too long of a game for what it's giving me.
Yeah, I think it should be probably about half an hour. If the game was half an hour, I would probably get a real kick out of it and play it a lot. Which kind of leads me to something I wanted to talk about, which was house rules. I plan to do a whole boatload of house rules for this game to cut the duration in half, cut the amount of units you use in half, and I think that would really kind of help speed the game along, because with so many models, it's kind of cool in that you feel like you have all these guys and you have all these options, but it tends to mean just more of nothing happening over and over.
Right. You could have 3 groups of standstill combat happening on the board, or you can have 1 group of standstill combat.
Yeah. So I think that playing with like 3 models or 4 models per player is about the cap I would put on it.
Yeah. So let's go into our final thoughts.
Sure.
So initially, after the before and after video, I didn't want to play the game again. That is still true.
And you were forced to.
But for different reasons. So, as I delved a little bit more into the game, I really didn't like the ranged combat. That kind of put it over the edge for me. I liked standing back and shooting from afar, but it just felt like it didn't have effect. So I'm gonna give it a final rating of a 2 out of 10. And this is the Board Game Geek rating system. So you could never convince me to play this game again.
Wow, that's rough. For me, if I was to play the game as is, straight out of the box, with the rules given, I'd probably give the game about 4.3.
4.3, okay.
With the house rules that I plan to throw into the game, I'm going to keep this game, and I'm going to play it. With the house rules that I've come up with, I think I would give it probably about an 8.
Okay.
And that just is shortened play, streamlined play, taking out a bunch of the little fiddly rules and replacing them with simpler, more streamlined things, and I think it will be a blast. And that will bring me to my last comment about this, and that is, I feel that the game system is very malleable in that you can mold the rules to be what you need them to be without breaking the core of the game of what it is.
Yeah.
And the game is kind of a sandbox game in that way, that you can just kind of manipulate it and come up with your own different challenge modes and ways to play the game.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of creativity in here and a lot of creativity in here, and I'm going to make it work, and I think I'm going to play it a lot, just not with the actual rules to the game.
All right, well, that's Ninja All-Stars, and that's our final thoughts after we replayed it with the correct rules this time.
Yep.
So see you guys next time.
Thanks for watching.